Hey everybody, welcome to the first ever episode of Tech and Beer with Calvino. I'm Calvino, and today we're going to be talking to my friend Giles Crouch, and we're going to be talking about AI and big data. So yeah, let's have some fun, hopefully learn a little bit about AI, and enjoy a great beer. How's it going, Giles?
It's excellent, Calvino. Glad to be
Excellent.
here. Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
The inaugural episode.
Yeah, exactly. It's hopefully the first of many.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, so you're a digital strategist / CIO and managing partner of a local company called Expansive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you've worked with lots of multinational organizations as well as some of our local kind of established companies that we all know and love.
And some smaller businesses and startups.
So you've got a broad range of experience.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And would it be fair to say that you're one of the kind of leading experts locally in AI and big data?
I don't know about an expert, but more than a working knowledge of it, perhaps. Yeah. And mostly focused in the business application of it and how businesses can leverage it and governments. Yeah.
So tell me a bit about that. Tell me about your experience and some of the things you've done.
Boy, I've done some work in the past with natural language processing, where we worked with Dalhousie University and their Big Data Institute, and also University of Montreal in translation of multiple languages, which was very interesting. Could we turn French and Arabic and analyze it on the fly? And natural language processing being a branch of AI.
Okay.
And we used data from the Tunisian elections a few years ago. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was quite fascinating. And then done some work in the area, mostly in where it comes to big data and machine learning, working with different large data sets to apply machine learning to come up with business ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we all have this kind of idea that we're taught in the movies about what AI is supposed to be and what it's capable of.
Yeah.
How realistic is that?
Well, it's a lot of fun. It's really scary, and they're almost always dystopian. But that's called general AI. What we see from Hollywood is general AI, and it can be scary. And general AI is when a machine essentially has some degree of consciousness and can make decisions and has human thought. And we're not there yet. In fact, we're really far away from it. Where we are today is what they call weak AI. And general AI is what they call strong AI in the more technical side. And weak AI means it's not weak, it can do a lot. It's very task specific. So chatbots are a good example.
Right.
Customer service, where people can go on and they think they're chatting with a chatbot, but they're actually talking to an AI system that is going and mining all the data they have to answer technical questions. Right. That's really where we are today, or an AI that fights parking tickets. Because it's accessing legal data, and has had a far better record than lawyers have ever had. So, sorry for the lawyers.
Maybe we can use that to negotiate lower rates.
Maybe we can. Yeah, I'm just going to go and get an AI, and that's where it is today. And to get to that general AI requires so much data, and it also means that a machine has to have consciousness, and we don't even understand what consciousness is today ourselves. So if we can't define it, how can we possibly teach a machine?
Right. That's true.
And if we think of it in terms of a machine, will machines even ever think like people? Because they're machines, not people. Yeah. They're not human.
Because it used to be said that as soon as a machine could beat the grandmaster at chess, that was consciousness and AI, and that was the pinnacle of machine learning.
Yeah,
and that happened some time ago.
And it did, yeah, with chess. And then, but when they had teams of humans playing chess against an AI, the humans won.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. And then they did Go, of course, and that was Google going after playing Go. That's kind of easy in a sense because that's a probability problem. Yeah. So when you're dealing with probabilities, you're dealing with math and you're dealing with algorithms. So that's understandable that we could get to that point. But Steve Wozniak has his favorite test for AI, which is, he calls it the coffee test. So can a computer walk into a house, know how to open the door, where to go to the kitchen to get the water, get the coffee pot, and then to make a cup of coffee?
Right.
Yeah.
A simple yet complex task.
Very complex task, yeah.
Exactly.
So machines aren't there yet. If you've ever, I mean, all of us, I'm sure we've used a cookbook and made a recipe at some point.
Yeah.
If you've made a recipe, that's an algorithm.
Right.
The ingredients could be like the data. and you can change the data and the different ingredients that you use, but the recipe could stay the same. So a recipe is an algorithm, and that's what AI uses, is algorithms.
Yeah. So you mentioned chatbots and tools like that, which most of us interact with today, maybe without even knowing. What are some of the really exciting applications that we're seeing start to emerge today that businesses are putting into place out there?
Well, certainly the healthcare sector, I think, is the most interesting, where they're using AI for cancer detection. And they're getting far more advanced because they can put the human cells, and an AI has so much data to draw upon, and it can figure out your cancers much earlier.
Right.
You can use it for drug analysis as well, so you can do tailor-made pharmaceuticals combined with DNA data. A sort of an environmental, a very interesting one that I was reading about is in Africa. I can't remember the country. I think it was Nigeria, maybe. They had a program for monitoring the zebras. And what they did was they went out and got photographs from people, tourists that had uploaded them onto the web. They coordinated that with GPS data, and they were tracking the zebras around. And what they discovered was areas where there were higher amounts of lion attacks. So by the AI learning about this, they were able to change the management program so that they could protect the zebra population.
Wow.
So that's kind of a neat example of it. Here we are in Nova Scotia in oceans technology.
Right.
AI is going to play a huge role in that. You have a big problem with underwater and spotting patterns, looking for submarines, for example. When you combine AI, areas of machine learning, you could detect enemy submarines or weapon systems, but you could also monitor schools of fish.
Yes.
And improve offshore fisheries as well.
Which is something that obviously is critical to this part of the world, right?
Absolutely.
To, ensuring the survival and future sustainability of those industries.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The ocean industry is key. So there's a couple of really neat examples, I think. Yeah.
That's interesting. So the other thing that we're kind of taught of in the movies is that AI is going to become this, uncontrollable monster that's going to want to kill us all, maybe at some point. So obviously that's not maybe realistic, but what are some of the realistic issues and challenges that we're kind of dealing with today?
The one today that I think is closest for concern would be the use of predictive analytics. So say I come to you in your university and I say, all right, I want to do my MBA, and so I need financing to do that. And the university says, all right, we're going to go and collect some data on you and figure out if you can get financing. So they get your information, they also get your parents' financial information and their track record and history, and they say, look, your parents really didn't do anything big. They were sort of maintenance people or whatever. They earned a lower income. And so, we look back generationally and we think you're probably not going to be good as an MBA.
Right.
So no, we won't train you as an MBA, but if you'd like to go to community college and learn how to fix car engines, we'll pay for that.
Yeah.
That's human agency. It's free will. That's the predictive analytics. Insurance companies are spending a lot of money in using AI for risk analytics, and that goes towards life insurance. Right? That goes towards auto insurance, home insurance. So those are areas that we need to develop rules and practices for. A little further down the road, we could get super intelligent computers. And there's a difference between AI that's super intelligent and AI that has a consciousness.
Right.
So you can imagine, you could create a very super intelligent computer that has no morals and ethics and says, humans really are the cause of all the trouble on the earth. And they do go out and find ways to kill us off.
Yeah.
That is within the realm of probability.
Yeah.
Or possibility, I should say. Yeah.
And they wouldn't be completely wrong.
They might not be. The state of affairs right now.
Some perspectives, interesting.
Now, on the good side, politically, they might be able to stop rogue candidates from becoming presidents.
Right. That would be very helpful.
That would be very helpful.
Interesting.
It's got a long way to go.
Yeah, and it is one of the most, when I look at all the technologies that are out there today that are kind of emerging and have a potential impact on the future of mankind or business, AI, for me, is one of the most exciting because it's, when you look at other ones, they kind of have a limit to them.
Yes.
And AI, it's, well, where is the limit? And I'm sure there is a limit somewhere, but right now it's hard for us to kind of quantify where that is.
Well, it is and it isn't. In one sense, there are two really big limitations right now, or maybe three. One is volumes of data. So the companies that are leading in AI, you think of them are Facebook, Google, Apple, Microsoft, the big tech giants, and that's because they have vast amounts of data at their fingertips. But they all have different kinds of data. Google's probably at the top because they have Google Maps, they have search data that they're collecting, and email, where they do aggregate information. Apple doesn't have that variety of data. It's all within their own ecosystem, and same with Facebook. Facebook doesn't have as much search data, but Facebook has sort of personal data, what our lifestyle is and what our preferences are. So data is one limitation. How much can you store? Data storage is very expensive. It's come down phenomenally. But to produce AI, when you're talking to Siri, there are vast data centers back there that are processing that in real time. So that takes a lot of energy. So the two big problems come into where do you store data, and then the cost and the energy to produce results for artificial intelligence. And those are limitations. And we've also reached a plateau in computing. We're not getting that Moore's law of computing anymore. We've sort of reached maybe peak processing power. That's a challenge as well. So how do you deal with the energy requirements? How do you deal with the storage requirements, the speed of communicating that data, and then how do you deal with the processing power?
Right.
And it's even with processing power today, it would take you 40 years to teach an AI one human language.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
which raises an interesting question. I heard a story, and I don't know how true or false it is, but I think it was Facebook that had a couple of AI machines that started to communicate together in their own language recently, and they shut them down because we couldn't decode their language.
Yeah, that's true. That is interesting. They developed their own language. It was for AIs, and they developed their own language because it was faster for them to work.
Right.
And they didn't know where that was going, and the language was really weird. So yeah, they shut it down. The other experiment that was done, and I think it involved Google, they created essentially, they had 4 or 5 AIs, and they gave them each an apple orchard, but they had to go and get apples and to feed them. And what started to happen was they were fine at first, but as soon as the resources got low for one or the other, they became violent. They would get more and more aggressive. So it was like, whoa, that's a bit frightening.
Interesting.
Yeah. So creating their own languages, aggression.
Again, not unlike some of the more primitive human qualities that
we
would have had in the past, right?
Yeah.
So,
It's one of the reasons that whenever I talk about AI, and I always advocate for more women in AI. And more women, and we also need more cultural influence, because a large amount of AI today is being driven out of Western nations.
Right.
So they're coming from, in Silicon Valley. So we're missing 2 key elements in there, different cultures, because what makes up our planet and what makes us human is our differences.
Yeah.
And that's different cultures and languages from around the world. And so you need more input. And if you have it just being developed in China, then it's going to have a Chinese-centric view.
Yeah.
If you have only men developing AI, it's going to end up with a male-centric viewpoint.
Yeah.
So you need the feminine with the masculine. That's what makes us human.
And that's a balance that we're figuring out, ourselves right now, in some very real ways.
Very much so.
So let alone influence our technology to be that balanced. That's going to be a real challenge in the future.
And I think, I don't know who was behind that apple orchard experiment, but maybe it was all guys.
Right.
Maybe they played a lot of Call of Duty.
Yeah.
But maybe that seeps into how things get coded. Yeah.
Well, it would be unavoidable that it would seep in, right? Yeah. Interesting.
It would. Yeah.
So, who's leading the race in the AI world right now? Like, who are the leading players?
It's like leapfrog these days. 1 minute Google's ahead and they've done something amazing. The next minute Facebook. Apple's made a stride. When you have corporate competition, because they want to leverage it for money, of course, for profitability. Then you have geopolitical struggles. France came out last week with Macron saying, look, France is going to be a global leader in AI. Neural networking that we were talking about earlier came out of Canada, so Canada's taken a leadership role. The US is doing a lot. China has indicated that artificial intelligence along with big data are fundamental to the country's development into the future. So you've got a geopolitical race that's taking place where it's almost like that's the new national flag that you have to plant in the ground. And then you've got
like the space race.
And just like the space race, yeah. And AI is penetrating out into space now already. Interesting. It's very complex, which makes it fascinating.
How about from a commercial perspective? You mentioned Facebook and Google already. Are they the big players, or are there anybody else behind the scenes that maybe aren't so public-facing or household names that we should keep an eye on?
Google and Facebook have made their advances by acquiring smaller companies. And I think there's a very similar approach with tech giants as pharmaceutical companies have taken. Probably about 20 years ago, pharmaceutical companies started to put the burden of drug development onto small startups and let them go through the trials and errors and do some of the initial experimentation. When it came close to valuable for commercialization, they'd swoop in and buy them up. And that's what Google did with deep learning. They went in and bought them. They were out of the UK. I don't think Facebook's going to buy Cambridge Analytica. Probably not on their acquisition list. I think we're all okay with that. But I think a lot of it will come through acquisition. There probably is some really cool companies doing some really neat stuff. Even here in Nova Scotia, I know that there's some investment in AI through Dalhousie. St. Mary's is looking at it. UNB in New Brunswick, MUN in Newfoundland is doing some stuff. So I think that there is potential here too. Smaller companies will pop up, but the big giants will probably swoop in and buy them and absorb them.
So, as a younger person, perhaps looking for their future in the technology field, or even in the workplace in general, what can they do to get involved in AI? How can they protect themselves, make sure that their jobs aren't going to be taken away by AI? Or how can they maximize their potential within that field? What kind of advice could you give them?
Well, this is where something like STEM comes in, and so the science, technology, engineering, and math. Get those fundamentals and build on them, but don't forget about the arts too. Jack Ma said a little while ago that humans in the future of AI, it's going to be about them understanding how to create music and be more creative as human beings. That's where AI doesn't do very well. It does terrible. And I think that's where human creativity comes. So we, go down a technology path, and I think the right mix is to understand the technology. To get into the basics of AI is really easy. Just Google AI. They have platforms there where you can actually experiment with AI.
Excellent.
You can't break anything. You can go in, you can input your own data. You can even use your own photographs to analyze. So if you've got thousands of photographs off your smartphone, you can actually use their AI engine to experiment with.
Wow. And
it's free, and you don't have to know any coding. Learning a language, taking on right now, I would say something like Python or Java, which are probably the two dominant languages for AI. Python because of its flexibility, and Java because it's object-oriented. But they both have strengths and weaknesses. But learning Python, here I'm an old dinosaur, and I figured out Python in just about a year. Right? So, and working with statistical languages like R R may not even be around for a little while. As we know, languages keep leapfrogging each other. C++ is still hanging around.
Still is,
And it also plays a key role in artificial intelligence today.
Right.
So just learning some of those languages. There are free courses, there's paid courses. I think that's a good thing. If you understand some coding and you can write some code today, that's really important. You don't have to know a lot. You don't have to be fluent in it. Or you might discover you have a passion for it. And next thing you know, off you go, and you're a code monster. But that's some of the fundamentals. But I think you still need the arts in there. reading and reading real books and sitting down and getting a sense of the humanities will be key to that in the future.
Yeah. Interesting.
And the commercial side, as you were asking about earlier, one of the we may never get to general AI where we've got this sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger style of Terminator, and it may not happen because there may not be a business case for it.
Right.
AI today it's chatbots, it's machine learning, it's natural language processing. All of those have a easily recognizable commercial benefit.
Yeah.
And they will take over some automation. You'll see jobs, and what they call in industry, we call it efficiencies,
Right.
which is sort of another word for layoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to evolve, or stop from being efficiencyed out of your job, an easy way is to look at a job and say, could this easily be automated?
Right.
So that could be an insurance adjuster, it could be a general practitioner or a nurse practitioner in healthcare. Sort of these lower jobs that don't require a lot of skills. But oddly enough, AI doesn't always do well with over complexity.
Right.
But if you think that a job can be processed really easily, that job's probably going to be gone within 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good chance.
And sometimes when we look back at the course of human history, that's happened at different points from the industrial age right up until today.
Yeah.
And it's not always a bad thing. It takes adjustment on our part, but other jobs, new jobs are created and new opportunities are out there, and normally there's a net benefit to society. You know, we no longer have the industrial kind of issues that we had.
No, we don't have
China
kids.
has most of them now.
Yeah, that's right. And even they're changing to a more services-based economy.
Exactly,
You know,
exactly.
Where's going to be the next manufacturing hub? Yeah, every technology is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And every technology has unintended consequences. You know,
Yeah.
Twitter was designed as a platform for ambulance crews to communicate with hospitals.
Right.
That was the purpose of Twitter. Now we have an insane president who's perverted Twitter entirely.
Yeah.
So, not to get political. And then the telephone. Alexander Bell invented the telephone to share opera music.
Right.
He had no intention of sharing it with for people to communicate, and that's how we ended up using it. So it's really hard to say how we're going to end up using AI, same as robots, and we're going to create whole new jobs. If someone said to you 20 years ago that there's going to be a job called a social media manager.
What's social media?
What's social media?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, or whole businesses that grow up around repairing the screens on our tablets and our smartphones.
Yeah.
That's a whole, and then the industry that came around with creating cases for them and all that. So that's created companies and jobs.
Yeah. That's true. We often forget about that, I think.
We do, yeah.
It's again, human nature. We get sidetracked by the kind of fear and uncertainty and lean towards that worst case scenario.
Yeah, the business side is hard because it's business and it's industry, and the purpose of a business is to be profitable and to make a profit, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they cut through the hype. But the media has the hype, and the way that we communicate as a species is through stories, and we tell stories, and maybe it's that ancient fight or flight thing. So when we tell these dystopian futures like the Terminator, and we get all scared, maybe that's our lizard brain talking.
Yeah, no, maybe, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, from your perspective, what are you working on? Are you working on anything that's in the next few months that's interesting in the AI world, or anything that else you'd like to tell us about?
I'm doing some stuff in the IoT space with a company that's they will actually use machine learning. They've developed a device that sits into your toilet bowl, and the initial test is for diabetes. So when you get up in the morning and you have your morning ablution, it tests what's in the toilet bowl and comes back and says, oh, your blood sugar's high or low, or they're working on a pregnancy test. They're working on a PSA test for men. And that will use machine learning, so that's an element of artificial intelligence to actually help within the healthcare side. So I'm working and advising them on that. And there's a couple of other companies that are doing some interesting area in AI. Now, of course, I can't say anything because that's their competitive advantage.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
thanks a lot for coming to talk to us. And before we go, we should talk about the beer, because it is called Tekken beer.
Yeah, well, it is called Tekken beer, and this is what 9 locks.
This is 9 locks, yeah. Dirty blonde.
Yeah, dirty blonde. Yeah, that's tasty. Yep.
Yeah, that's
good.
It's acronym. Cheers.
Congratulations to the first episode.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you again next time.